I'm Emma Carter. I'm 36, a brigadier general in the U.S. Army, and for most of my life I was the invisible daughter. You know the one. The family member who's always there, always quiet, always in the corner of the group photos that no one remembers taking. I didn't grow up wanting recognition. But when you spend enough time being ignored, something inside you starts to shrink. It's not about wanting to be the center of attention. It's about wondering if anyone even sees you. Every family dinner followed the same script. My sister Alyssa would walk in like a spotlight followed her, and the room would tilt toward her with applause that wasn't audible but still deafening. Her latest promotion, her client list, her curated social media success, all laid out like trophies on the table before we even touched the food. I'd sit quietly across from her, nodding along, a polite smile fixed like armor. My parents would laugh at her jokes a little too loudly and offer unsolicited praise, like she'd saved the country by negotiating a real estate deal. And then, like clockwork, someone would glance my way and ask, "Emma, you still working that desk job with the government?" They never meant harm, but that's the thing. The cuts that sting the most are often the ones made casually without thought, like you're just background noise in someone else's big scene. I'd smile and answer with some vague response, always careful not to say too much. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I knew they wouldn't really listen. It's strange how lies can settle into truth when repeated enough. Somewhere along the way, the story that I'd failed out of military training became the family narrative. Alyssa was the rising star. I was the girl who couldn't cut it and settled for stability. And I let them believe it. I let the story stay simple, because it was easier than explaining what I really did or how deeply it hurt to be misjudged by people who claimed to know me best. That night, at yet another family dinner, as I watched Alyssa hold court at the head of the table with my father beaming like she'd just landed on the moon, I realized something. They didn't just overlook me. They needed me to stay small, because that made her shine even brighter. It started with a single sentence casually dropped like a joke at a brunch table. Alyssa, with her champagne smile and perfect timing, looked across the table and said, "At least Emma found something safe to do after basic didn't work out." Laughter followed. Small, polite, clueless laughter. And just like that, a lie rooted itself in our family story. No one asked me if it was true. No one pulled me aside to check. It was easier to accept her version of events than to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was more to my silence than failure. Alyssa's version was neat, digestible. I had tried the military, couldn't hack it, and now I pushed paper in a government office somewhere. It gave her something to contrast herself against. She was the winner because I had lost. What they didn't know was that the day I came home looking like hell, ribs-wrapped eyes, hollow wrist, bruised from training, I hadn't failed anything. I had passed a classified selection course, one that left people broken physically and mentally. But I couldn't tell them that. I had signed a non-disclosure agreement so ironclad even whispering details to my parents could have ended my career. So I said nothing. I swallowed their sympathy, their judgment, and let the silence become a wall between who I was and who they believed me to be. The lie metastasized. Alyssa turned it into a story she told with mock concern and that performative tone of someone pretending to care. Emma just realized the military life wasn't for her, she'd say. It's okay. She's more suited for stability. That line got repeated at family parties, at weddings, in Christmas letters. It became canon. Every time someone looked at me with that mix of pity and dismissal, I felt like I was disappearing. Not because I hadn't achieved anything, but because the truth wasn't available for public consumption. I wasn't in a basement shuffling files. I was working in secure facilities, making decisions that impacted national security. My clearances were higher than most people in Washington would ever hold, but to them I was the sister who flunked out and settled. There's something uniquely painful about being mislabeled by people who should know you best. It's not just disrespect, it's erasure. And the worst part was I let it happen. I didn't correct them. Not because I agreed, but because I knew they wouldn't understand the truth even if I laid it out for them. My father once told a neighbor that Alyssa was the go-getter and I was the steady one. He meant it as a compliment, I think. But all I heard was forgettable. My mother once asked if I liked having job security. Like that was the only reason someone would work for the Department of Defense. She had no idea I was leading intelligence analysis teams and coordinating multi-agency operations. None of them did, because they never asked. They never looked past the surface of what Alyssa had said, and honestly, part of me believes they didn't want to. Her story made them comfortable. It kept the family hierarchy intact. And I, the real me, didn't fit into that picture. So I stayed silent. I wore their misunderstanding like a uniform. It protected me in a way. As long as they saw me as small, I could operate in peace. I could do my work without their interference. But that kind of peace has a price. And the bill was starting to come due. My actual office wasn't a basement. It was a skiff, a sensitive, compartmented information facility. No windows, just cold fluorescent lights and walls lined with secure servers. The air always carried a low mechanical hum, like the place itself was thinking. Everything in that room mattered. My team analyzed intelligence that shaped real-time responses to national threats. We weren't running drills. We were flagging foreign proxies, tracing financial channels, and decoding patterns that others missed. I briefed senior officials on anomalies buried in encrypted data streams. I wasn't just part of the process, I was driving it. If I flagged something as critical, people listened. Fast. There was a wall of screens in the front of the room. Each one monitored a different theater of interest, a different kind of risk. I stood there more times than I could count, pointing out details no one else saw, connecting dots across continents in minutes. No one cared what I looked like. No one asked who my sister was. I was respected because I was precise, because I saw the pattern in the noise and knew when to act. I had earned that trust one mission at a time. In that space, I wasn't the sister who didn't measure up. I was the analyst whose report could launch a federal investigation or shut down a covert operation. There were no family dinners there, no backhanded compliments, just clean data, sharp minds, and high stakes. My rank wasn't ceremonial. I didn't get promoted for surviving time. I got promoted because I delivered. My decisions protected people not metaphorically but literally. When I said something was a threat, lives moved to safety. It wasn't glamorous. There were no headlines or public praise. But I knew what I was doing mattered, and that was enough. Even if my family never saw it, even if they never wanted to, I did. And I never doubted it for a second. General Hawkins was the only person in my world who truly saw both versions of me. To my family, he was just an old friend who'd served with my father. But to me, he was the man who quietly pulled me from obscurity and taught me how to carry weight far heavier than a uniform. He first noticed me when I was a junior officer, barely holding it together after a mission that had gone sideways. While others saw a tired young woman with too much on her plate, he saw something else. After reading one of my after-action reports, he called me into his office, closed the door, and said, "You have the mind for this work. Don't waste it playing small." He never praised me in public. He never made a show of anything. Instead, he opened doors others didn't even know existed. He pushed me toward roles I didn't feel ready for, then stood back and let me grow into them. When people questioned my placement, he'd say one sentence that silenced them: "She earned it." Over the years, he became my compass. Not in the soft, hand-holding kind of way, but in the way that reminded me I wasn't crazy for wanting more, for needing to be useful beyond what the world expected of me. He never asked me to explain what my family believed. He already knew. There was a quiet grace in that. He didn't defend me at dinners or correct their assumptions. He respected the wall I had built even if he didn't agree with it. He knew I was choosing service over recognition, and he let me do it on my terms. The night Alyssa made her usual joke about me failing out of basic, I caught his eye across the table. He didn't say a word, but the look he gave me, tired, frustrated, and full of truth, said everything. He knew the cost of silence, and he carried it with me. The file landed on my desk like any other. A standard preliminary request from the DOJ for DoD liaison support on a corporate fraud case involving defense contracts. I skimmed the cover sheet with practiced efficiency until my eyes caught a name that stopped everything. Alyssa Carter. Her name was typed in bold black ink under primary defendant. I read it again, not out of disbelief, but to confirm that I hadn't imagined it. My heartbeat didn't spike. My hands didn't shake. Instead, I felt something colder settle into my chest, a kind of clarity I hadn't expected. There was no anger, no flash of vindication, just the precise stillness that comes when all the pieces of a puzzle finally lock into place. I read through the summary. Shell companies falsified invoices, misappropriated funds. It was exactly the kind of web I had spent my career unraveling. I could have recused myself, sent it along to another division, and walked away. It would have been easier, cleaner, but I knew the facts and I knew the stakes, and above all I knew I was the most qualified person in the department to handle it. This wasn't about her. This was about the law. About the taxpayer money she stole, the system she gamed, and the men and women she endangered for profit. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was doing my job, the job I had trained for, the job I had earned. When I submitted my notice of assignment to General Hawkins, he read it silently, then looked up with a calm that mirrored my own. No questions, no doubts, just a quiet nod that said, "I trust you." And with that, I took the case. The courtroom was quiet. That thick, suffocating kind of quiet you feel in your chest. I walked in boots, silent on the carpet uniform, pressed sharp ribbons and medals resting neatly on my chest. I didn't look at anyone. My family sat in the front row. My father straightened when he saw me, confusion tightening his jaw. My mother's eyes darted toward me, a flicker of annoyance that I was even there. Alyssa turned, caught my eye, and gave me the same tired, condescending smile she always had. Like I was background noise. Like I was nothing. Then the bailiff's voice rang out. "All rise." There was a shuffle, a rustle, and then silence again. The judge stepped in, took her seat, and read from the docket. "The Department of Defense observer is present. Brigadier General Emma Carter." My name hit the room like a detonation. I saw my father freeze. The color drained from his face like he'd been punched. My mother's mouth opened in shock, one hand flying to her chest. Her mask of social grace cracked wide open. Alyssa didn't move. Her face went blank. That confident smirk shattered. Her eyes locked on mine, and in them I saw it all land. Every lie, every joke. Every year she built her worth on my supposed failure. Gone in a breath. The judge gave me a formal nod. I returned it without breaking eye contact with the one person who had rewritten my story. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just stood tall in the truth I had earned. In that room, in that moment, I was not invisible. I was not less. I was the highest-ranking person there, and for the first time they saw me. 6 months after that courtroom day, Alyssa was convicted. The evidence was overwhelming. Her carefully built empire had collapsed under the weight of greed and arrogance. The headlines didn't soften the blow. They named names. She wasn't the Carter success story anymore. She was a cautionary tale. My parents tried to reach out after the sentencing. They approached me in the hallway as I spoke with the prosecutor, looking smaller than I'd ever seen them. My mother reached for my arm, her voice breaking. "Emma, we didn't know." My father stood behind her, speechless, the authority drained from his posture. I didn't say a word. I gave them a small professional nod, not out of spite, but because that was all I had left to give. There was nothing to explain, no version of the past that could be rewritten now. We had lived in separate truths for too long, and I had no interest in merging them anymore. My office was different now, bigger, brighter, a corner suite overlooking the Pentagon. I had earned it through years of quiet, steady work. My new team didn't know about my family. They didn't need to. What mattered here was competence, clarity, and integrity. And for the first time, I was surrounded by people who saw me as I really was. Then one afternoon during a case briefing, my personal phone buzzed. I glanced at it out of habit. It was a message from my mother. Long, rambling, full of excuses, and a strange attempt at sympathy. She painted herself as someone who had been shut out rather than someone who had chosen to stay blind. At the bottom were 5 words. "We're so proud of you, General." I stared at the screen for a long time, waiting to feel something, but I didn't. No anger, no satisfaction, just silence. The wound had healed. The ache was gone. I pressed archive and placed the phone face down on the table. Then I looked around at my team, focused, sharp, engaged. I cleared my throat, picked up the next file, and we got back to work. That old story was finished. This one was mine. My office now feels like home. Not because of the view or the title on the door, but because of the people who walk through it each day. Analysts, investigators, attorneys. Each one chosen for their integrity, their skill, and their commitment to something bigger than themselves. We work in sync. We speak the language of facts and evidence, not favoritism or perception. No one here cares where you come from. They care what you can do. Every time I sit at that long conference table and lead my team through another case, I'm reminded that this is the world I chose. A world that chose me back. There are no fake smiles here, no shallow praise, just respect, earned and given. I used to think silence was strength, that staying small kept things simpler. But now I know that owning your truth is the real power. Not shouting it, not proving it to anyone who refuses to see it, just living it fully and without apology. My rank didn't just shock my family. It freed me. From the weight of their expectations, from the pain of their judgment, from the need to explain myself. I don't carry that burden anymore. I walk taller now, not because of the uniform, but because I know who I am, and no one can take that from me. If you've ever felt dismissed or unseen, if someone once told you you weren't enough, I want you to hear this. Your worth isn't measured by who believes in you. It's measured by what you keep showing up for day after day. It's real, it matters, and you deserve to be seen. If this story reminds you of your own, share it below. You're not alone. You never were. And in this space, your rank, your truth will always be recognized.